Expression is an essential ingredient to our own inner alchemy from sexual trauma. Expression because our body is going to want to detox, to release everything that it has suppressed. And when I say everything, it doesn't mean it's going to come up in one big go and become overwhelming and traumatize us. That we can take our alchemy gently and tenderly and move into a relationship of being able to listen and witness. And of course, expression is a very big part of that, because it may have been during our trauma we did not have the ability to express or the freedom to express, or we just didn't have the words to express. So one of the things that I explored was art. So children use art to express the unexpressible, because children do not have the words to be able to tell us how they are feeling or even what happened. And we as adults, if our trauma happened when we were a child, or sometimes we have a feeling that is just so overwhelming that we cannot find a word for it, and we can get choked up on our own language, on our own vocabulary. So I began to communicate with the child that believed the trauma was still happening. I began to communicate with the child that was hurt and be able to approach her from a space of being an adult now that could hold a space and listen to my internal child. And art was a beautiful, deeply enriching way of connecting with a child that was still existing on a parallel level to me, that just didn't have the words for what happened to her and the words to express how that was feeling. So often when I created a safe space to communicate with the wounded parts of myself, there would be an overwhelming emotion, and rather than suppressing it, I would give it the space to come up through art. So I would prepare some paper, so a huge space of paper on the floor, and with some coloured bottles of paint around me, and to close my eyes and connect with that emotion. So an emotion is something, it is a feeling that is old. It is a feeling that we felt at that time that has become stagnant and become an emotion. So I would have these different coloured bottles of paint, and I would close my eyes and connect with that emotion. And I wouldn't choose the paint from my vision. So my eyes were closed, and so it wasn't coming from my head. And I would just move my hands over the paint, over the bottles, and my hand would select a bottle. And then I would tip the paint on my hands. And I didn't use a paintbrush or anything, so that there was no obstruction between the emotion and the paint. It was just the emotion meeting the paint, meeting the paper, no paintbrush. And with the paint on my hands, I would just allow it to come out. And it wasn't that I was making art. It wasn't going to go on the fridge. It wasn't going to go on a wall. It wasn't about approval or validation, or for even having to look like something. It would be a huge mess, like a toddler's painting. But all of a sudden, this emotion that I would have no words for would be out on paper. And then from it being out of me and visible, I'd be able to truly understand and to truly have heard the pain that was still existing within my emotions within my body mind. And that was very freeing. And I would attend and meet with this part of me every day. And that was important, to have the trust in myself that I was going to attend to my emotions, tend to my body mind, tend to my trauma every day, that I was going to show up for myself. Another wonderful way of expression I found was clay. Not to determine what the clay was going to look like. Again, I wasn't going to create an object, but just as well, this bringing in some sensual experience, moving the clay and just, feeling through the emotion as it came out in the clay. And then when I'd open my eyes, I'd have an understanding of what this part of me was trying to express. I created a language. That helped me explore and understand so much of what actually my mind couldn't remember, because it'd been so disassociated. Also, writing was a great channel, a great expression for me. Once I could move beyond the unexpressible. But sometimes I would want to pick up a pen and there would be lots and lots of foul language and anger and hatred and all those things that I maybe wanted to say at the time to that person and people and didn't. And that was very liberating. So what we are doing when we are expressing something that's been so internalized, we are creating space. We are creating space for something new to come in. When our bodies are so full of trauma and suppression, everything is so tight and it almost feels there's no room, there's no flexibility, there's no flow, there's no movement for anything to move, anything to arise from that, anything to change. So our expression is truly a meeting of our emotions, a meeting of our trauma, an understanding. It's a language. It's an ability to meet oneself and show up for oneself. But it's also an ability to be able to create space within our own body. Our poor bodies have suppressed so much for so long that they want to clear. They want to clear out and release what happened so that they can meet more in a present moment of what is happening.